Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Today, we are talking about New Jersey's race for U.S. Senate. With less than 5 months until the Senate primary, a recent poll showed that most voters don't know a lot about the candidates running for the seat currently held by Senator Bob Menendez, who's facing mounting legal trouble amidst charges of corruption. We're going to dive into that, as well as talking about climate change and how plans for 2 offshore wind projects were abandoned. What does it all mean to New Jersey? First up, we welcome Joey Fox to the show. Joey is a writer for the New Jersey Globe and covers the state's congressional delegation. Joey's also going to be joining myself to moderate the first U.S. Senate debate in New Jersey coming up later this month. Joey, it is good to see you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, the race for U.S. Senate. People certainly know the name Bob Menendez. He's under indictment. He's got a mounting number of legal challenges, but they don't know the other candidates. So let's first start on the Democratic side. We have a current Congressman, Andy Kim, and we have New Jersey's First Lady, Tammy Murphy. Those 2 are running. So can you kind of set the stage on the Democratic side?
Yeah, sure. So obviously I think that the story of Bob Menendez is pretty well known at this point, at least among New Jerseyans and honestly around the country. That really took off in a way that usually these kinds of process legal stories don't necessarily. So Bob Menendez was indicted last September. The day after the indictment against him came out, Congressman Andy Kim, who is from a South Jersey-based congressional district, announced he was running against him. And that was pretty unusual because usually in New Jersey you have a lot of backroom talking, a lot of deals being made before anyone would ever launch a candidacy. You don't just kind of jump in, and Andy Kim just jumped in. And so that kind of set the stage for his campaign. He's been in Congress this is his 3rd term right now. He flipped a very competitive seat in 2018. And then about 2 months later, you had the First Lady jump in. So Phil Murphy has been the governor of New Jersey since 2017. That entire time, so his 6 years in office, he has very much been one of a 2-person sort of duo with his wife, Tammy. They are very much a political power couple who do a lot of things together. She would go with him on, official trips for the state. She had a portfolio dealing with climate change education and maternal mortality rates. So she's not just the First Lady. She was very much a political player in her own right.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, you bring that up. I think that is definitely going to be one of the challenges that she faces because we don't have a major market in New Jersey. You have the New York and Philly. So when you hear the name Tammy Murphy and First Lady, that's going to be a hurdle that she's going to have to get over because people who know her do know that she has her own agenda. She isn't just the governor's wife, but in the voters' minds, who may not be following this as closely, they might think, oh, what is this? The governor trying to get his wife elected to make himself look more powerful. Can you talk about those dynamics?
Absolutely. That has been the defining dynamic of the race so far. From the day that she entered, first of all, from the day that she entered, she has gotten incredible levels of party support. She is the choice of the most powerful Democrats in New Jersey politics. She has 6 Democratic House members, so all Andy Kim's colleagues are backing her. She has the official county party support in a lot of New Jersey's biggest counties. So that was an early dynamic to her campaign. But then also you have seen exactly what you're saying, this sort of voters saying, well, wait a minute, what exactly is going on here? We've never voted for Tammy Murphy before. This is not someone, we voted for Phil Murphy, but this is not someone who we would naturally think of as the first thing that she should run for in her life is U.S. Senate. And that has been an avenue of attack that Andy Kim has absolutely exploited. He has been saying, I respect the First Lady, but what are we doing here? What is this political system that sort of props up someone who has never run for office before, who is a registered Republican until a decade ago or so? She's been a liberal Democrat in her campaign and in her recent years, but that was not how she started out. So yeah, that kind of those questions have been the dominant feature of the campaign so far, and I think they will continue to be as it goes on and as they start spending more money.
And that's an interesting part about the New Jersey primary in general. It's all about what's happening behind the scenes because there isn't a tremendous turnout. The primary is the first Tuesday in June. So, we're going to have a little presidential fatigue by the time that they get to New Jersey's primary. And what happens with the county chairs and where people are placed on the ballot, it matters when you go into the voting booth. Again, the voters aren't always paying attention to those dynamics. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of those county decisions and what actually happens kind of behind the scenes and in ballot placement and where the name goes on? Will Andy Kim's name be first? Will Tammy Murphy's name be first when you open up that voting booth to cast a vote?
Yeah, so basically, New Jersey political parties, and specifically county parties, there's 21 counties in New Jersey. Each of them have their own Democratic and Republican Party organizations. And the way that they command a huge amount of power in New Jersey is by making official endorsements in the various races that are on the ballot that year. And then this is in 19 out of 21 counties, including all the biggest. All of their endorsed candidates will then appear on the ballot as like a unified slate. And so what you end up with is, you'll be looking at the ballot and the official endorsed candidates of, say, the Essex County Democrats, that's like Newark. You would have Joe Biden at the top, and then Tammy Murphy, and then Mikey Sherrill, if you're in that congressional district, and then whatever, town council candidates are up that year. And so it's all this very unified set of candidates who are all campaigning with one another, who are all spending on lawn signs that feature one another. It's all very tightly knit. And then anyone else who's running off the line will just have to forge ahead on their own. And so voters have the ability to make whatever decision they want, but the county parties are sort of helping them along the way long before they actually reach the ballot box. I think what's interesting about this year is, this Senate primary has an unusually high degree of attention being paid to it. The Menendez indictment and the spending that we're likely going to see from Kim and Murphy is going to have people making opinions on the race independent of what their county party organization is telling them to do. Right. So
and Menendez hasn't even said if he's going to run or not.
Right. Although honestly, most people in New Jersey politics are treating that as a little bit of an irrelevancy because he is polling so terribly. New Jerseyans have just, of all demographics, all parties have completely turned against him. If he were to run again in the primary, he would get no party support anywhere. And I don't know, probably 5% of the vote, 10% of the vote max. Yeah. And so that's just, I think that most people are treating that like, well, he can do what he wants. But at this point, we've moved on to Andy Kim and Tammy Murphy.
Right. And that's, part of when we host the debate, we want to make sure we're letting the voters know to get a really good look past the headlines, because Bob Menendez, that is the big headline, and the corruption trial. And the trial is set to begin in May. So again, more eyes will be on it. And what we want to do, and maybe you can talk to this, is give viewers a chance to take a look at who is Andy Kim, who is Tammy Murphy, and also the Republicans. We'll get to that as well. Who are these candidates? And as a reporter, as somebody who's covered them, do you see a lot of differences between the two of them on what issues that they're going to be talking about that may not be grabbing the biggest, most glamorous headlines? What type of U.S. Senator could Andy Kim be? What type of U.S. Senator could Tammy Murphy be?
Honestly, I mean, the two of them have been campaigning, at least on the issues, the two of them have been campaigning very similarly. They're both, relatively liberal, relatively mainstream Democrats. And that is on the specific issues that you can ask about and that we're going to ask about on the debate. I'll bet you're not going to see a ton of daylight. I mean, I remember I interviewed Tammy Murphy for a brief story the day that she announced, and I specifically asked whether she saw any obvious places where there was any daylight between her and Kim, and she didn't say anything. And Kim hasn't really taken anything that she said and said, well, this is our clear policy dividing line either. Right. The really big difference between the two of them so far has been less on policy and more on process, about how these endorsements are being made, how they're running their races, how New Jersey politics should work. And I think that in part because of the Menendez indictment, that's an issue that voters are unusually focused on this year too, of, they have lost trust in politicians to some degree. And that is a big theme of both Murphy's and Kim's campaigns more than any individual policy issue. Right.
And, we talk a lot about Democrats because it has been since the 70s since a Republican has held that seat. So even as members of the media, we talk a lot more about the Democrats because it is it's a fact that it's just going to be harder for a Republican. But there are There are a couple of candidates who have declared on the Republican side. Can you lead us through the names that we have right now and some of the other ones that are percolating out there?
Yeah, so there are two announced candidates, and that's the mayor of Mendham
Mendham
Borough,
Mayor,
which is
right?
a small
Right. Christine
suburb.
Glassner.
Yes, Christine Serrano Glassner, who has ties to, she's the mayor of a pretty small town, but she has ties to the sort of Donald Trump orbit,
Mhm.
and also has a fair number of endorsements already from within New Jersey Republican circles. Just recently, you had a developer named Curtis Bashaw enter, and he might be he's from South Jersey. He might be more of the South Jersey Republican candidate. And you've got a former reporter, Alex Zidane from News 12,
Mhm.
who has not launched a campaign yet, but who has been making, he's been making like campaign style videos. He's clearly leading up to something,
Right.
but we'll see whether he actually enters the race.
Yeah.
Um, I think any of the three of them are fairly credible candidates, but do I think that any of them can sort of turn that long losing streak of Republicans in New Jersey around? Probably not, at least from where we stand right now, and assuming that Bob Menendez isn't the nominee. If he's the nominee somehow, then it's a whole other ballgame. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Right, right. Well, and this is New Jersey. You never know what can happen. But again, the odds are against them. And before the scandal broke with Bob Menendez, this was probably one of the safest U.S. Senate seats in the country. So there
Yeah.
is some opportunity for Republicans, and maybe if they don't even see winning this U.S. Senate seat, is there a domino effect leading into our next election, which is 2025, and the race for governor, and Republicans trying to get their acts together and really, because that's going to be an open seat next time for governor. Is there an opportunity to perhaps parlay that and the issues and put things out there about the Democrats in New Jersey and how it is controlled, the governor's office, the Senate, the Assembly, majority of Congress, it's all in Democratic hands?
I think possibly, yes. I mean, I think that, this is a bit of an obvious statement, but I think Republicans always want to run the best race they can run. And in this case, the benefits of running a strong U.S. Senate campaign, even if it doesn't end up leading to a victory, is helping down ballot candidates for Congress. New Jersey is going to host a really competitive congressional race, most likely, in the 7th congressional district. Tom Kean Jr. is a freshman congressman who is in a toss-up race. And, even further down the ballot, county races, town level races. So, you always want to run as good of a campaign as possible, just in case, just to catch any potential wave that exists, to help everyone below you, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I mean, I think that if you see a really strong performance from one of these Republicans, if they, I don't know, say lose by 5 or 6 points, which would be impressive in New Jersey. Usually you would see a Republican candidate losing by 15 or 16 points. If you saw them lose by something much less than that, then you'd probably have people saying, well, I guess New Jersey isn't such a blue state after all. Let's see what we can invest in this. Let's see where we can go from here.
Right.
So yeah, I think that there is absolutely an upside to running a strong campaign, even if it doesn't lead to a victory.
Right. And, just looking back to the last gubernatorial election, Jack Ciattarelli came a lot closer to Phil Murphy than a lot of people expected. And again, this is New Jersey. You just don't know what can happen in the Garden State.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, my first year covering New Jersey politics was the 2021 governor's race. And it definitely caught me and pretty much everyone else watching it by surprise that, we thought, well, Phil Murphy's probably fine. And then on election night, everything was just starting to go wrong for Democrats. Right. So that kind of taught me early that you can't make too confident of a prediction about any given election year.
Right, right. And the final thing that is still out there, that it doesn't look good optically for Bob Menendez, but he's innocent until proven guilty. He has a trial that is coming up for May, and you don't know how that's going to go. So a lot to keep your eyes on, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to the individual potential outcome of the trial, but it definitely, I mean, that will be happening right in the thick of this primary, whether Bob Menendez is running or not. I mean, that will be commanding a lot of the attention, is what is going on in this trial. And, we can't know what that will look like yet. It'll be...
You never know.
Yet another crazy couple of months in New Jersey politics.
For certain. Joey Fox, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Recently, I sat down to speak with Mike Williams, a senior fellow at American Progress. He's an expert on climate change and environmental injustice. And we discussed the news when the Danish energy firm Ørsted decided to cancel 2 offshore wind farms off the coast of New Jersey and what it all means to the state. Here now is our conversation. Mike, we welcome you to the show and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
I really appreciate it, Laura. Happy to be here.
Well, the governor has made it very clear that part of his legacy as governor is his energy plan. And these 2 projects in New Jersey, these windmill projects, were huge. And he looked completely caught off guard. So I wanted to get your take on what exactly this means for the state.
It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And Governor Murphy was right to put a lot of focus on building out an offshore wind industry for the state of New Jersey. He was right because that investment should mean jobs. It should mean consistent energy. But he was also right when he did this and was moved early in 2019. I want to lean in on that early part to lock in a good rate for consumers. But because he moved early and because the state moved early and Ørsted jumped in early, there was a lot of things that happened between then and now. And it's really quite unfortunate what happened. It stinks for the state of New Jersey. It's too bad for the offshore wind industry. But I think we can look back with rose-colored glasses or what have you. But it was the right move, and offshore wind is still building out. And so we just have to look forward and see how we can build this out in a better way.
Right, and the company, Ørsted, came out and said it isn't necessarily that we don't believe in the project. It was it was cost prohibitive because there was a backup due to COVID of supply, and it was a number of things falling upon each other, not necessarily because New Jersey wasn't the right place for it. So can you talk a little bit about their reasoning and what they had to say?
Yeah, New Jersey is definitely a great spot for building out offshore wind. It has the right seabed, a lot of wind, so there's a huge resource out there. It has, an exceptional workforce. It has great coastline in terms of ports ability to handle the build out of offshore wind. So any talk about how there shouldn't be offshore wind off of New Jersey doesn't make sense. It's a great spot for this. Ørsted had to make this decision, which again was really unfortunate. And you mentioned this, Laura. They locked into this contract in 2019. That was before COVID. And what are the things that we know that happened during COVID? Supply chain costs went through the roof. What else happened? Interest rates went through the roof. Those 2 parts of this puzzle made the cost of this project completely different from what they bought in originally. And so they made a business decision. I mean, it's really too bad. And I don't know the particulars, so I can't say, oh, they were wrong or they were right. But it absolutely stinks. But they had to deal with those unforeseen circumstances around supply chain, around interest rates that really, really impacted the cost of this project. Additionally, they put in this bid and locked in these contracts in 2019. In 2020, there was a full pause on all offshore wind work by the Trump administration. So that set everything else back a year. Had that not happened, this would have been started building already, and it probably wouldn't have stopped anyway.
Yeah, and there were a lot of investments. There were tax incentives that were given to this company. But these aren't the only 2 offshore wind projects in the state. Can you give us a little perspective, right? When people hear about this, give them that perspective of what else is happening in New Jersey, what other companies are investing, and how that factors into the state's master plan for energy, clean energy.
Sure, yeah. And the state of New Jersey has done a great job in creating strong incentives to build out this industry. And you talk about there's additional offshore wind projects. Ørsted alone is building a project called Revolution Wind. It's in New York. They're looking at building out their project Sunrise Wind. There are projects in Connecticut, in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, in Virginia, looking at building out North Carolina. So offshore wind industry on the East Coast is being built out. It is happening. And it's not just Ørsted, Equinor, Shell, so on and so forth. There's multiple other companies that are building out the offshore wind industry. And again, New Jersey has great incentives. It has an exceptional workforce, and it has a government and governor who are committed to this. So I do believe that there is a very clear future for New Jersey to build out this industry. And it hopefully will come out of this in a better place, in a place where they can get a really good deal with a company to make sure that consumers are protected and then still get that real big build out of offshore wind power off the coast of New Jersey.
Because a lot of the research, it has been done. So it's not like, am I correct in saying it's not like we're starting from square one?
That's exactly correct. The research has been done, permitting has been done, the siting has been done. So there's a lot of work that's already there. So a company can come in and know, okay, we know these parts of the New Jersey coast that make sense to build out these projects. We know where cable landings can go. We know what the impacts are on whales. We know what the impacts are on fishing industry because this has already been done. And so it's almost like the Ørsted cleared the road, but then couldn't do the build. But this opens it up for other companies to do this, or potentially Ørsted, who still owns these leases. That's the other thing that I think hasn't been clear. They still own these leases, so they could conceivably come back and build.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about the whales, and NOAA came out and said, because we had some whales that were washing up offshore in the spring, early summer, and there were people saying, "Oh, well, this is because of these offshore wind plants." But NOAA came out and said, "No, that isn't it." So how do you deal with that persistent storyline? Because when a whale washes up, it's going to make headlines, and people, no matter what the data is, they might say, "Well, this is because we're doing too much out in the ocean. We should not be infringing on their habitat."
It's a persistent level of misinformation that's happening. The scientists who work on this issue have shown that the whales that have been washing up, they died because of ship strikes. Why are there ship strikes happening? Because of the whales are changing their migration patterns because of climate change. The water's warming, so they're moving in different places, and the ships are hitting them, and they're dying. There is no offshore wind being built off the coast. How you could blame offshore wind for the whales washing up literally makes no sense. But there is an industry behind this that doesn't want offshore wind built out, whether it's politics, whether it's the oil and gas industry, what have you. But there are folks who don't want to see it built, and they're trying to play this up. So I think we need to take a step back and listen to the people who study this day in and day out, NOAA, wildlife biologists, scientists, and show that what is actually happening to whales, it's the ship strikes and it's climate change, and then to see how we can build out an offshore wind industry that will fight back against the climate crisis.
You have a very strong ally in Governor Murphy. Now that we have finished with midterm elections here in New Jersey, he is not able to run for a second term. How hopeful are you? How close in contact are you with the governor in trying to look at alternative projects to get this project back on track? Because again, the governor set out a very aggressive plan by the year 2035, a lot of energy independence. So, how do you feel about that political climate, so to speak?
Yeah, and Laura, I think last night was a harbinger of how offshore wind is going to play in elections. And I told a pretty clear story. A number of folks ran against offshore wind, and those folks lost. The folks who supported offshore wind, they won. Governor Murphy's commitment to offshore wind, the New Jersey legislature's commitment to offshore wind, was validated by voters last night. And so it's really important for everybody who cares about this industry and who cares about the climate crisis to stand up and work with the governor of New Jersey, with the legislature, to figure out this path forward, to make sure that these previous commitments can be met, that we can help the state of New Jersey build out an offshore wind industry. They can get the benefits from the quality cost, the better air, the high quality jobs, and move forward out of this bad situation with Ørsted. But this commitment showed politically that people support this. They support a build out of the clean energy economy. They support efforts that are going to fight climate change. They support building infrastructure projects that help build up good jobs, good union jobs. So all of this matters. And I think it's just looking forward and how do we now either convince Ørsted to go back to the table and look at building, to convince other companies to come in there. And I think that won't be hard because, again, we talked about this. There's a lot of the work's been done. New Jersey is a great spot to build these projects. And it's just digging in and finding those solutions.
Yeah, and finally, you just touched on something that sometimes gets lost in this story, and that is all of the jobs that this was poised or is still poised to create in the state thousands of jobs. Can you talk a little bit about that economic impact that it would have on New Jersey and the people who would have those jobs here in the state?
Yeah, offshore wind, above everything else, is in and of itself a huge infrastructure project, a big one. It's a big one on the coast and it's out in the water. And so to do a big infrastructure project, it requires a lot of people doing construction, a lot of people doing logistics, and a lot of manufacturing. And offshore wind has all of those components. And New Jersey was set to benefit from all of them. So this project getting canceled by Ørsted is not a good thing for any of those. Yeah. So we need to look forward and make sure that offshore wind happens in New Jersey, and it happens soon. How do we get companies to come into New Jersey and look at the seabed that's available, look at what needs to be done to get projects up and running? Because even though the project was canceled, there were a number of manufacturing companies that were set to move there. There was logistics already up and running about how to do cable landings, how to stage work at ports. That's all done. So a company can come in and have that connection there. They can do work with the building trades unions who already had a project labor agreement set up and make sure that this happens. And maybe it's only a couple month delay or a year delay, but New Jersey still gets those benefits.
All right. Mike Williams, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and explore this issue a little bit more deeply and its impact. Thank you. And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.